welcome back to another episode of Pretty Suited Podcast, where we discuss career, culture, and the commitment to being our best selves. I'm your host, Lauren A. Happy August. It's good to see y'all. Like always, I like to shake things up. I like to experiment with different things with this podcast, see what, I enjoy doing, see what you guys like to do as well. It's weird because I went to Target the other day, not really planning on getting anything in particular. Sometimes you have those days, but you really shouldn't do that because you always end up getting something at Target. But I was just thinking to myself, I don't really have that many games. I may have some cards, I'm always down to play some cards, but I don't really have any adult games. So I just stumbled across the section where they have like cards and games and stuff. And I actually picked up this 101 conversation starters for couples. It's by Gary Chapman. This is the guy who wrote the book Love Languages, which, everybody knows now at this point. If you're not familiar with the love languages, please get familiar. It's really, really good when it comes to learning about what kind of love you receive and what kind of love you give, right? Well, anyways, so this card deck, I opened it up and I was just asking, a friend of mine, just some of the questions, and we really got to learn a lot about each other. So I'm just going to pull a card just to kind of see where where the energy is going to be in this episode. Okay. Let's see. Is this the front? Hold on. I'm just going to pull from the front because I don't want this to be too complicated. So I guess this is question number 60. Name an Old Testament event that you wish you could have witnessed. That's an interesting question. I guess I never really thought about that. The Old Testament. So we're talking about before Jesus Christ entered the story, in human form, if you want to get technical. So that was there was a lot of good stories in the Old Testament, I think. When that woman turned into a pillar of salt, that would be kind of interesting to see. Jonah and the whale, that would have been kind of cool to see him reemerge from the whale like, nothing happened. But you know what? I think my favorite story would probably be Joseph. And the reason why, and I probably, top two. Let's do top two, okay? David and Goliath and Joseph's story. So we all know the story from, Bible school when we were little, or if you just so happen to, learn the Bible and know the Bible. We all know that David was chosen to become the next king, and he was going to take some food out to his brothers in the field when they was fighting the Philistines. And so he took the food out there. Everybody was losing. And he was like, well, I got this, right? So he took a rock and a slingshot and he slung it and the giant fell. I think that would be kind of interesting to see in person. Now, of course, I'm going to be in the back, right? I'm going to be in the back. I'm definitely not trying to, I'm just witnessing because I'm, getting the tea to tell my girls what's happening in the field, right? So when he got that slingshot, everybody else is failing. All these dudes with all this armor, all these dudes with all of this bravado and, training. And here comes little old David, really not even doing much yet. He hadn't even, gotten to the throne yet. And he literally just found out that he's going to be king not too long ago. And he took a slingshot and a rock and literally slung it, and the giant fell. And that was a triumphant moment. And I'm pretty sure everybody's face at that at that site was like, I know he didn't just once they got excited about it, like once they were like, yay, it's done and we can go home. For them to just see that happen just from rocking a slingshot, I'm pretty sure they was a little tight. I can guarantee you that. And then when it comes to Joseph's story, I think that Joseph, if you're not familiar, Joseph had brothers, and his brothers were mad because his father really liked him. His father, I guess, was making Joseph, the favorite or whatever, and they was really salty about it because they think that he could do no wrong and stuff like that. So what happens when people get jealous? They try to seek revenge against you. Why? Because they're miserable and they're projecting that insecurity onto you. But anyway, so I think they ended up selling their brother, selling Joseph to slavery or to be a prisoner. And he was in the prison for a while. And then he just so happened to get in good with the king at the time, because he was able to I wonder, was he the one? I think he was able to interpret dreams. So with him interpreting the dreams, he was able to get in good with the king. And then so the king had him as his right hand for a while. Then he was able to move on up to be like the king himself eventually, after a whole bunch of other stuff. But eventually he was able to become king. And then when his brothers, when he was able to see that there was a famine happening, and he was able to prepare his town for the famine, his brothers came to him, and they didn't even know it was him. They just came to the person they thought was king and was like, hey, we need some help. They didn't have no money. The father was sick, all that good stuff. And so, and in this situation, Joseph was better than a lot of people in the situation, because in his heart, he wanted to just kind of be like, you know what, after what you did to me and after the life I lived, I could do you wrong and just say, no, we ain't got it and send you on your way, right? I could do that, but that's not the right thing to do. So he decided that he wanted to help them out. And then once they found out that he was king, they were like, oh, snap, we thought we left you in the prison. And so again, the reaction of his brothers, just like the reaction of the Philistines and David's crew, to see them be triumphant in those moments, I think would be a really cool thing to witness in the Bible. I think those are really good points of people going above and beyond what others thought they could do. I think that's a good point. Oh, I see where the energy's going. In this right here. People literally and truly underestimate your ability. And while you may not even see the ability in yourself either, but for those two characters to have been kind of counted out and then literally become kings after the fact, after they've gone through some of the things, but was able to be resilient and still follow God's word, and then become triumphant, and then now everybody's looking like, what? Huh? How did they do that? Your story ain't my story. Okay? You tried to play me, but God had other plans. So I really, really like that question, actually, because I think that would have been some real tea back in the day to see that happen in real life. Okay, I like the way that started. I might do that from here on out. We'll see. But those are some interesting questions. Even if you want to ask, it is for couples. So even if you want to ask your significant other stuff like that, I think it'll be good insight as to how they think, right? Because you just never know if you always asking, well, what color you like? Well, what color you like? Well, where you from? It was just, while those are important, I think we could get a little bit deep into some of how people think, because you'd be surprised. Very. So judging by just that question alone, I think it kind of ties into the topics that we're going to talk about today, because honestly, I have been thinking real hard about what hurt can do to people. I understand in my own experiences how hurt has driven me to make decisions that I really wouldn't normally make if I wasn't hurt. And, those are the moments where you feel like I don't really care anymore. And so you end up making real short-term and short-sighted decisions based off of how you feel in that moment. And we're human. It's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. But it's up to us to really learn from those moments and learn when we're being responsive or impulsive or something like that. We have to learn ourselves and learn, am I triggered right now to be really impulsive just because I think it's going to make me feel better? And so unfortunately, sometimes those hurtful moments can really turn into real trauma. And nobody really wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about how the hurt that they've experienced really influences and shapes not only their decisions, but how they live their life. Right? Like, honestly, trauma can really stop you from reaching your full potential because you're still navigating off of feelings and emotions as opposed to actual practical situations. Now, we're human, so we're going to be emotional, and some emotions can play a part in making the right decisions. Emotions aren't bad. That's another thing I want to dispel, is that emotions are bad, because let social media tell you, let the world tell you that emotions are terrible and that you shouldn't feel anything and you should be detached and unbothered and all that other foolishness. First of all, that's not healthy. Okay. Any trained psychologist or therapist will tell you that the fact that you don't feel emotions towards behaviors or situations is the first red flag. Like that they're going to start inquiring about some other things if you start to become too detached. So we don't want to feed that narrative that becoming emotionalist is a thing, or that's a good thing. But what I will say is to have proper emotional intelligence and emotional regulation. That way it doesn't hold you back from moving forward. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because me personally, I grew up, I had a fantastic family, I had a fantastic childhood, had a fantastic loving home, wouldn't trade anything for the whole world. Honestly, I loved my childhood. But what I could say was that there were moments where we didn't have a lot of money. In like a lot of black homes, unfortunately, my parents weren't married throughout my whole life. They were married for a short period, but then they got divorced, which is fine because they were great co-parents. But my mom pretty much raised us, and we lived with her, so it was almost like a single home environment. Although we spoke to our dad every day and he was present in our lives. Unfortunately, we didn't always have a lot of money. So in those times, whether we had to eat at grandma's because we didn't have any food, or we had to, our neighbor, she might have helped us out, watched us while our mom was at work because we didn't have any lights, different things like that, that in those moments, in those sporadic moments, we had to learn how to be adaptable. It is what it is. But again, I loved my childhood and my parents. I don't want to say anything like that, but again, in those moments where you do have without as a child, when you're kind of just learning how life works, that can be a traumatic moment, right? You come at home and you have no lights, you have to light candles to take a shower, or you have to, go over your friend's house to be able to do your homework, right? Because you can't see, or you don't have cable, so you're rewatching videos over and over again. I have literal movies where I know verbatim because we didn't have cable, so we had to rewatch the same, recordings over and over again. So little things like that, you're just learning to deal with and cope with as a kid. So, I grew up with poverty trauma, and not like we were dirt poor. We always had a roof over our heads and stuff like that, and clothes on our back. But if you feel yourself insecure in those moments of having to be resilient, then you're going to try to do whatever you can do to prevent that from happening again. Right? That's the goal, is to prevent that from happening again. And so a lot of the decisions that you make is like, hey, I'm not going to go back to that. So I got to do what I have to do to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so you end up, whether it's like, choosing careers that are secure, you end up choosing situations where you feel assured and not like it's not shaky, because you like, no, I can't risk that. Right? So you become more of a conservative person. So all of those things, just because of the poverty that you experience, you just do your best to not deal with that again. And so, unfortunately, because you take less risk, you end up kind of missing out on a few things. And I'm not saying I'm regretful of the decisions that I make, because I feel like all of them has led me to a point of being a really, really cool individual, and in my eyes at least. But let's say if I really wanted to, let's take film, for example, or media or communications, it's something that I really enjoy doing now as an adult, now that I have the flexibility to do it. But as a young person, I was like, I like this, but I just don't know. It's not secure. I'm in a saturated market and all this other stuff. So I was a little apprehensive to go for it full steam ahead. And so, realizing that now as an adult that because of that trauma, I was afraid to take that risk on something that I really, really, really wanted to do, that in a sense held me back. And so again, it's one of those things that you don't really recognize until it's, later on in life when you've done a lot of self work. But your past experiences can prevent you from doing things moving forward. And I think this is a really good example. We all know Kirk Franklin. He is a gospel goat when it comes to hip hop and R&B infused into gospel. He made it mainstream. He is just one of the ones. He was on Cam Newton's podcast or show, and he was talking about hurt, and how hurt can basically hold people back, and the judgment and the hurt can hold people back from living out their dreams and their purpose, or even just their lives. So check this out.
Marriage has been weaponized in Western Christianity. Giving has been weaponized in Western Christianity. Sexuality has been weaponized. For example, any woman listening to this can attest in our culture. Don't be no 30, 35-year-old single black woman and go to the family reunion. All the older women are going to do them. They're going to look at you and wonder, why you not married?
Where your man at? Where your kids at?
Like it's a prerequisite for identity and value. That if you don't have a man, if you don't have kids, that something about you is broken. Do you understand how dysfunctional these messages are?
Yeah.
Paul said, but marriage is a necessary distraction. I have many friends that were in ministry at church, and the church has told them, if you're going to be in ministry, you can't be single. We're not going to let you work with the youth ministry if you're single. You can't do this if you're single. And so what people do, they quickly get married thinking that they're fulfilling God's will for their lives, but they are fulfilling man's dogma. You can be single and be used by God. You can be single and have purpose. Being married is not a prerequisite for God's hand on your life. It is not, but we've weaponized it. And then crucify people. Where my camera at?
Right
and
there.
And then crucify people when those same marriages don't.
Fail!
Wow, right? Like, it's so crazy because a lot of the information out there these days, honestly, is geared around single women, single men, and why it's shameful for you to even be single, and why don't you have children? If you want to have a spouse, you got to do A, B, C, D, and E. Like, it's just so instructional, and everybody has an opinion on these instructions, and a lot of people don't even know what they're talking about. But again, when it comes to church and how, faith and religion is a huge part of a lot of people's lives, how even those messages, it's creeped into those messages. It's like, dang, you can't even catch a break. You can't catch a break at home with your family. You can't catch a break on social media. You can't catch a break at work when Susie asking, where's your husband and what you did this weekend and all stuff like that. And then you can't catch a break at church, which is supposed to be a safe place. And so a lot of people feel that conviction and that judgment when it comes to those things, because they feel like it's put on such a pedestal that they can't reach it, and now they feel shame about it. Now, we do understand that God does hold the sanctity of marriage at a high regard. Let's not twist, and spin the narrative. That he does hold it in a high regard, and it is a covenant that is supposed to be cherished. So, but as far as individuals getting to that point, that journey is supposed to be celebrated as well. Because what we don't want to have is the individual who, if that's what they seek, but they haven't even done the work and the real faith and restoration to get to that point to where that situation is detrimental to them, man or woman. So, again, cultivating and helping people to become better people without that guilt and shame attached to it. Because at the end of the day, I know a lot of miserable miserable married people. Male, female, miserable. Why are they miserable? Well, because they stopped doing the work. They thought maybe marriage was the end goal, the finish line, and didn't even continue to do the work to make themselves better people for their partners. So they could do a better job of just, you know, shifting the conversation of less you need to be married and why you ain't married and you ain't nothing, you ain't a part of the club if you ain't like type thing, to a more, hey, let's prepare you for that person. Let's prepare you. Let's enjoy the journey to there. You know what I'm saying? And once you get there, let's continue to grow and develop you, because that is not the finish line for a lot of people. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And when it comes to church hurt, like, it's one of those things that it's touchy for me. I'm not going to hold you. It's touchy for me because I understand what that hurt can do to a person. Like, it really can hinder your growth and development in your faith and in spiritual health, because I'm a holistic type person. I feel like mental health, physical health, emotional health, financial health, and spiritual health play a large part in you just being a whole person. So yes, even if you don't believe in an actual religion, spiritual health is still a thing. Your spirit is still a thing. Like, what feeds your soul? What grounds you? Where do you pull inspiration from to continue to move forward and work in purpose? That's what I'm saying when it comes to spiritual health. And if your spiritual health is not grounded in a place where you feel comfortable, where you feel nourished, where you're getting fed, then it's hard. I feel like it's harder for you to really navigate the triumphs and the pitfalls of life like that. So if you experience some trauma at church, whether it be some judgment that happened between you and your family. Maybe you got pregnant when you were young and you faced adversity. Maybe, they didn't help your family out when you guys were poor. Maybe it was some, abuse going on, sexual or physical abuse going on in the church, whatever, infidelity, right? Because there's a lot of that going on with pastors and deacons and whatnot, side babies and all that. Like all that can influence that person's trauma and hurt. So if that happens, I think it takes a real effort to really want to say, look, that was jacked up, right? Need to work through that. But then also understand that those are humans. Supposed to be, of the cloth and all those great things, but they are human. And humans will let you down majority of the time. Okay? I don't care what name you got in front of your name, what name you got after your name. Humans are humans and they're going human. Okay? And so attaching that to, the divine entity themselves can lead you down a path of wanting to throw the whole thing away. And that might not be the best answer if you really do want to seek out spiritual health and healing. So again, going back to what Kirk Franklin said, I feel like we could do a better job of, making sure that people are being the best versions of themselves before they try to jump to the altar with all that damage and all that baggage, all those scrapes and scars and scabs and whatnot. Let's work on being good people first. Let's work on being a compliment to another person first, instead of being a hindrance or a burden because you ain't done the self-work yet. Please. Okay. How many of y'all have had an ex where they did something and you were like, never again? Never again. Me, I'm that person. I had an ex who literally was a liar. And not in a way that I felt like, my life was in danger or anything like that. But, well, I take that back. I feel like the thing that he lied about, I was like, if you can lie about this, what else are you capable of lying about? Like, I just didn't feel comfortable continuing on a relationship based on the lie he told. And so I knew that going forward, you're showing signs of the same kind of lies that he did and he said in the past. So I'm going to go ahead and move out. I'm going to go ahead and head out, like that kind of a thing. And for me, yes, it's important to be vigilant and to notice things and red flags and things like that. But what we don't want to do is be like a little I Spy, like where you're just trying to find whatever it is that you're looking for. That can be kind of dangerous and it can hold you back, because I know if you were that person and somebody questioned everything that you did, if somebody always had a rebuttal, if somebody had to follow up on everything that you like, that's annoying. Who wants to deal with it? Who wants to deal with that, honestly? And so, taking it upon myself to say, look, I understand that people lie. I understand that person lied in the past. But this person in front of me have not given me any reason to believe. So until that happens, chill out. Chill out. I had a history of being like, look, I just rather not, but that whole intimacy versus isolation conversation is a big one. Because, instead of saying, I want to do the self work to make sure I'm not triggered so much, you rather just isolate yourself. And then now you don't have to deal with anything. Sounds fun to me, right? It could be, but that's not a good thing, because honestly, you're still not solving the problem. The problem is that you're triggered by the lie so much that you're pushing everybody away. So again, just figuring that part out and letting that hurt go, letting that trauma go, to where, again, don't be stupid, be vigilant, and make sure that you're setting boundaries, make sure that you are, noticing red flags as they come. But you don't want to be so dismissive of people because they literally displayed something that you were searching for, to the point where even if they weren't even displaying it, you thought they were displaying it because you were so triggered, and now they're not in your life no more. So it's just like, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Have a discerning heart, but don't go looking for drama. You know what's crazy too? So this woman I saw on Instagram literally tied a lot of this into a bow. Watch this clip.
It's a study where they had a bunch of rats in a cage and they left the gate open. And every time the rats would try to leave, they get shocked. They try to leave, they get shocked. They try to leave, they get shocked. Eventually the rats just stop trying to leave. Fast forward, those rats had little baby rats. They put the baby rats in a separate cage and left the gate open. And they never tried to leave. They'd never been shocked. They'd never experienced that same trauma, yet they still acted in that same way. And that's how we understand epigenetics. Trauma and response patterns can be passed down to us. This isn't just through generations, it could be through lifetimes, also something that may have happened in our childhood. What situations in our lives are we keeping ourselves in when the gate is wide open? If it is your birthright to live the most expansive, joy-filled, love, an engaging life ever, where are you staying stuck where the gate is wide open? And where do we find and expand our perception to the possibilities that are outside this gate?
Man, like seriously, I feel like, has anybody ever heard of the story of like the elephant in the circus? And the elephant in the circus had one leg tied to the post, right? And so whenever the elephant would want to go further, he would get, like, of course, brought right back to the post because he was tied to it. And so each time he wanted to try to get away, he just couldn't because he was tied to the post, to the point where the elephant didn't even try anymore. And once they took literally the rope off of the foot and he was no longer tied to the post, he still stayed there. Because over time, if you've studied any psychology 101 in high school or college, you know about Pavlov. Pavlov is the doctor who was, developing that theory on conditioning, and how if you do something a lot to the point where people start to understand the consequences of it and the rewards of it, they will keep doing it or stop doing it. It's called, we usually say, Pavlov's conditioning. And so it's the same thing with this rat story. But in this story, this is so interesting because this goes back to the whole thing about slave and trauma and African Americans in this country. it's crazy because the people really don't, they dismiss the idea that trauma can be passed down through generations, literally in the DNA, like literally. And so, yeah, that person may not have experienced that trauma themselves, but they already have the fingerprint. They already have the responses embedded in them. Isn't that crazy? So again, when you are talking about, you know, people being resilient, people being tough, people being, afraid of certain things, people being, negative, people being, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying everything is genetic based because you can't really prove that, but I do believe that some things are genetic and trauma is included in conversation. And so people talk about generational curses. Well, what does that even mean? People, generational curses, but this can be tied to that, right? Because if you have literal bad or negative energy that's being passed down through generations on a genetic level, how can you break that? You would have to literally know that it exists and then try to break that. So that is so interesting to me. I thought that was insane that those rats who were the offspring of the rats that dealt with that trauma, they didn't even try to leave the cage. So think about all the things that you didn't even try to do because you were just so fearful of the result. Or you didn't even try just because it just wasn't even your radar to do so. Think about all the things. What about traveling? That's something so simple as traveling. I don't even want to travel that much because, I feel more comfortable right here. Well, where does that comfort come from? Why don't you want to travel? Why don't you want to do something like this? Why don't you want to go after your goal or your dream? Why don't you want to move? Or why don't you want, what is actually holding you back? Is it really just comfort, or is it something that maybe has been embedded in you and you're not even aware of it? Man, that was crazy when I first saw that video, because I can even imagine some of the things that I'm apprehensive of doing. And it was just, because whatever. But maybe my great grandma, she wasn't doing it. So she done passed that crap down to me. I don't know. But we can't have that. So, I don't need to be afraid of what you was afraid of. Please, ma'am, take that with you. Because I got things to do. Okay. So now we're going to get into our watch list of the week. So this week's watch list of the week, we are talking about the Olympics. As we all know, the Olympics just passed this past Sunday. And for the past 2 weeks, I have been glued to my TV, literally, whenever I can. I know a lot of stuff came on during the day while I was at work, but when I could, early in the morning and late at night, I was definitely watching recaps, definitely tuning in to see who won, how many medals we had. I became suddenly so patriotic. I wanted everything America to win. I wanted everybody, from the USA to get their gold, get their medals. And I enjoyed it. This was probably one of the best Olympics, Summer Olympic Games that I've seen in a very long time. Like, I know that the one that was back a couple years ago in 2021, Tokyo, that one was kind of different because of the whole pandemic. So they really weren't able to do much. The crowd wasn't there. It wasn't very, production, creative. It wasn't that creative, honestly. It was really just, hey, get these athletes in there. Let's let them do their thing and we're going to get them out. Like, that's what it felt like. So, but this year they put a lot of effort, a lot of energy into making this a real production for people at home watching. So one thing I will say that I was a huge takeaway for me for this particular Olympics was the fact that it was just so many beautiful women just spearheading this whole thing. Black women, white women, Asian women. It was just so many wonderful, beautiful, capable athletes that were really knocking down doors and taking these medals home. We were responsible for majority of the medals won at this Olympics. That's how amazing we were. So I really thoroughly enjoyed seeing all the beautiful stories that they displayed. The swimming girl, Ledecky, she was amazing. Simone Biles, this whole Jordan story, that was a hot mess because honestly, that could have been prevented. And all the back and forth, that's just a traumatic thing for that young girl to have her medal not given, and then stripped and all that. It's just because of some technicalities. I just don't think that's right. But I do think that seeing that woman, what's her name? I can't think of her name. She was from the Netherlands. I think she's Ethiopian for real, but she represents the Netherlands in the games. She won the marathon, the 10,000 kilometer, 5,000 kilometer. She was walking and that was in a span of a few days from each other. I don't know how this woman has legs still, but she was amazing to see her just still even so vibrant after doing all of that to get her gold. I thought that was pretty cool. They even tried to knock her off her square at the end of that marathon. I saw that. I think it was Ethiopia. She tried to knock her off her square, but she still did it. She still won. And just seeing those stories was great. It was good to see Coco Gauff and LeBron hold the flag in the beginning, and then see Simone at the end, with the flag as they passed it on to LA 28. Y'all, I would love to see LA 28, but I don't know. It's going to be crazy out there. Like, I would love to see that, honestly, because it's probably not even going to come back around, into America for a while. So imagine all that preparation to get it. Because the last time it was here, I think the Summer Games was 96, right, in Atlanta. So, yeah, I'm still thinking about that, but that probably will be real dope when they go to LA. So, yeah, congratulations to all those who won medals, gold, silver, and bronze, because we all know, and people talking about just the gold, but look, if you've worked this hard for 4 years and got a bronze out of the hundreds of thousands of people who were there representing their country, leave me alone. Okay? You can't even walk up the street without huffing and puffing, but you want to talk to me about my bronze? Leave me alone. Okay? So shout out to the people who got bronze and silver and gold. Okay? So now let's get into our tune of the week. So this week's tune of the week is about, I'm actually going to take it back a little bit, just a tad, to 2019. Now, I discovered this song, I want to say it was one summer when I was like at the beach somewhere. And you know how they play just pretty much lighthearted music, but I was just like, okay. I asked the bartender who it was, and he told me their name was Emotional Oranges. So, fun fact, I do listen to and have been an avid listener of Rory from Rory Amal, also Joe Budden podcast, but that's a big story. But Rory is also a producer. And he's produced, R&B projects, as well as I believe he is the manager of Emotional Oranges. But they put out some really good music. But this song in particular is called Personal. It came out on their earlier, I want to say, mixtape called The Juice in 2019. And this song called Personal has been a staple on my playlist since then. And so I just wanted to bring it up as my tune of the week because I've just been in that summery vibe lately, especially since the weather's been nicer out. And so it's been on my playlist just driving to work or going to run errands. It's very lighthearted. It's definitely an outside song, something that you listen to on the way to go do something. So it's really, really fun if you like that kind of music, if something that has like a little bop to it, but it's kind of like alternative R&B. Now you can also check out their latest stuff. Again, they still put out music even in 2024, so they have a lot of good stuff. But this particular song is very close to my heart because I don't know about y'all, but 2019 was a good year for me. 2019 was a very good year for me. And so I remember that summer like it was yesterday. And that song was a part of that soundtrack to that summer. So check it out. It is Emotional Orange's Personal. So that brings us to the end of our episode. Oh my goodness. I feel like it just flew by. But I think we were able to talk about a lot of good things. I think that, the conversation around hurt was a very touchy one. I wasn't even quite sure if I wanted to talk about it, but I really feel like, maybe it's the hair. If you hadn't noticed, I got my faux locks in and I'm kind of feeling a little bit more earthy and in tune. So, I just felt a little inspired to talk about something that, some of my friends are going through and some of the things that I've gone through in my own life too, when it comes to letting go of hurt. So, it's been a pleasure as always. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Get the information out there and check me out on the Pretty Suited Book Report as those episodes come out as well. Follow me on Instagram at @TheLaurenA. And as always, you cannot manifest anything you don't feel like you deserve. So create the life that you want and look to the sky for grace. Until next time, bye.